right, and it's recording. All right, we're back for part 2 of Going Five Hole podcast, the reboot, the Rangers edition. I'm your host Mike, joined with, as again, Dennis. Joined our special guest Alex, and big boy Nick.
Hi. Oh man, is that the new playoff towel, Alex? Those are going to be there.
Yes, that is the new playoff towel.
Everybody, oh, I hate being locked in my house. All right, yeah. So going forward, playoff match between the Carolina Hurricanes. I have such mixed feelings about this matchup and from when we got it, because initially it's like, yeah, we did really well against them this year. And then at the same time you go, yeah, but they're a really good team and they're kind of built for the playoffs. I'm just going to start
Carolina, man.
Well, technically it's a 6 versus an 11 seed. So technically the Rangers are playing right now. They're the big underdog. So
yeah,
I'll pose this. I mean, going forward, do you think the Rangers have a good chance? Do you think that it's going to be an even series? Do you think it's going to be weighted one way or the other? I guess I'll start with you, Bruce. What do you – I don't need like necessarily a prediction yet. We'll save those towards the end. But
yeah,
do you think it's a little more even, or do you think it slants one way or the other?
I think it's a New York Rangers playoff series. I think you can take all the stats and all the comparisons and all the paper and throw them out the fucking window. We've seen this movie before. How many series have they gone into where we go, oh, easy. Oh, this should be a 5-game series. Well, when it's best of 7, and then they struggle and they have to scrap their way through some easy series. I'm talking about when they were the President's Trophy, President's Trophy.
They won 7 games. They won 7 games with Ottawa and then the Flyers. Yeah, I remember.
Right.
That.
So, I feel like it doesn't matter the year. It doesn't matter who the players are. I just feel like it's a Rangers playoff series. Yeah. How many? Oh, it's 5 games this time. It's going to go 5 games, and it's going to be like one game we're going to like, oh man, how are we not killing them? And then the next we're going to go, oh, here we go. There's the classic Rangers shit the bed playoff game. It's going to be that. I mean, that's just for me. But
so let me just say this. Let me pose this. Who do you think it leads towards? Who do you think it leads towards? Like, if you had to guess, like, if the people going one way or the other.
I mean, Carolina's not as healthy, kind of right off the bat. I think their best defenseman's out, Dougie Hamilton. Well, one of whatever you want to make the argument. I think that's a big time loss for them, especially with their defense is better than ours. Just going by stats, right. The Rangers had more goals against, but we scored more goals. So I think we have more firepower, but I think we can easily get let down by our defense. Carolina is just as talented up front.
Okay, so then let me pose this question to you, Al. Bruce brought up the just it being a Rangers playoff series. Do you think that the Rangers now being kind of different from, like, I think people are still stuck in like that 2014, 2015 era where it was like a by committee, and I feel like the Rangers now have the superstars in Zibanejad, Panarin, and do you think that makes a difference, or is it still going to be like Bruce said, that 5-game grinded out type of series? What do you think?
I don't think we're that team anymore. That was more the Tortorella identity, and then the couple of years after that, it still carried over a little bit just because the players that were on our roster and they knew how to play like that. I don't think we're really that grind out of a team. I mean, personally, I think this is a incredibly even matchup. I think, honestly, the Hurricanes with anybody is going to be kind of even because the Hurricanes are just such a balanced team, and
they're very deep. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be a tough team to break, but I also don't think they're one of these teams that has a chance to win the cup. So it's like one of these teams that are just solid, and it's like the Rangers need to be able to play close to their best to be able to beat them, I think.
Because they're basically the same team as last year that did well in the playoffs against like the Islanders. Because I do believe the Islanders swept the regular season series with them, and then they beat the Islanders in 7 games, I think it was. All right, so let me, and I agree with you. Yeah, but they also beat the Islanders too, if I'm not mistaken. I could have swore they did. But let me ask this question to you, Nick. Do you think, because I think everybody's thing is concerned is like with the COVID and everything, but just injuries in general. I think everybody said coming into it, Dougie Hamilton was a great get back for the Carolina Hurricanes, who was having a great year prior to them going out. Him and Brett Pesce, who are both out. Do you think that's being overblown a bit, or do you think that's kind of right on the money with this is going to actually be a big hurdle for the Carolina Hurricanes to get through?
Without Dougie? Yeah.
Yes. Or
I
Brett
have
Pesce
a
too.
very strong opinion on the series itself. I think one of two things is going to happen. The Rangers are going to come out and be flat, and all that momentum that we built up at the end of the season is going to not be there and not exist, which that's the probably 1% in my mind that's going to happen. The 99%, we're going to go out and we're going to roll Carolina. I don't even think it's going to be a close series. I think the Rangers are going to drop one game. I'm going to guess and say it's probably game 1, and then they're going to win in 4. Because the star power that we have now and the confidence that these people have now, I don't think any Rangers team has ever walked into a series feeling that way. And I think the backstop, which I'm just going to put in my head that he's going to play, that Igor Shesterkin's going to be in this series, is a fresh, well-rested goaltender. You know, coming right off of an injury, he's looked great in practice. I don't even think this series is going to be close without Dougie Hamilton.
Okay, so I'll stop you there. I'll stop you there because you segued perfectly to what I want to say. So the big question, and it still hasn't been, and maybe by the time this thing comes out, this point will be moot, but because it's relevant now, I will say it. Hank or Igor? And I don't think this is as close as people want it to be. I think the only thing is Hank has such a good track record with Carolina. I think personally, and I'll just answer initially myself, and then we'll go to whoever. I think it's Igor. Because the Rangers are, I don't want to say playing with house money, but they really weren't supposed to be here in the playoffs at this point. This was supposed to be another rebuild year. I think the experience he can get in, not an atmosphere, but in like the play of the playoffs is going to be invaluable moving forward. And I do think Igor is, I mean, he won the Continental Cup over in the KHL. So he's won before. It's not like he's a total newcomer to things like this. He's been a big series when he was with Moscow. I think it's Igor. I personally don't think it's that close. I don't want the whole Hank farewell tour. I really don't. I don't think it's worth it. The one thing I will say is I would like, and I hope doesn't happen, is that let's say they start Igor and then next game they come back with Hank. I don't want to see that, or vice versa. If they start Hank and he has a bad game, I don't want them to go to Igor. I want them to stick to whoever is their guy. Yeah. So I'll go to, let me go. All right. So Nick, since you brought him up, what do you think too? Like, am I right? Am I wrong? What do you think?
To give everybody context, that's Hank. Okay. Every Ranger fan would love to see Hank come in, dominate, win the starting job back, and take the Rangers to win the Stanley Cup, right? If we're being realistic about it, and that's what my heart wants. You know, my favorite hockey player of all time, of course I want Hank to come in and start and dominate like the old days. Let's face it. He's 37 years old. The game's changed since he was a dominant NHL goaltender, and you have a goalie who's adapted, not even had to adapt to that. He grew in that, and he's used to it, and he came in – he played 12 games and went 10-2. With a high save percentage, and was, like, you know, it wasn't even close during the regular season. So if Igor's showing any signs of that in training camp and in this, I don't know what's going on for the preseason game tomorrow or the exhibition game, whatever.
They're probably going to split because I saw before they had Harper play 2, and then Matt Murray play 2, and then the last period the backups came in. So I think they'll probably know that.
Yeah,
you can only dress 2 goalies, so they can't even throw all 3 out there. Wanted to get a look.
Yeah, but either way, I mean, you can't. If you want to win and you're there to win, you can't start Hank. And it sucks to say that as someone who loves the guy, but you just can't. If you want to win the series and Igor doesn't look hurt, you can't start Hank because he's just been better, and we've turned into a winning team again under Igor, in my opinion. You know,
I agree with that.
Georgie's thrown into the mix, but I don't even think Igor and Georgie are close. Igor looking from a goalie's perspective, someone who coaches like younger goalies, Igor looks perfect almost in his footwork and the way he goes around the net and how fast he is and how you can't even realize how fast he is because of his positioning. I don't even think it's close. I think you have to start Igor if you're in the series to win.
All right. So, Al, what about you? What do you think? You're in.
I think it has to be Igor. I mean, I agree with you saying that I think the experience is extremely valuable, but not even thinking in that way. Just thinking on we're trying to win the cup this year. It has to be him because you don't have the time in a 5-game series to start Hank and then him to come out and suck like he was shown he did in a couple games this year, or more than a couple, but did in a bunch of games this year.
Right.
So just on a strategy standpoint, you don't have time to start Hank. It has to be Igor. You have to ride the guy that shows he's a better goalie at this point of his career.
Now, do you think, and I said it before, if, let's say, for whatever reason, Igor has a bad game, you stay with him?
Yeah.
The first game, you stick with him?
Same thing. Okay, Igor might have a bad game, and then who's to say that Hank will also not have a bad game in game 2? You know,
Correct.
I think Igor has a better chance of bouncing back. Just maybe he's a little rusty in game 1, whereas Hank might just not have it anymore. I just don't think you could risk it. It has to be.
Plus, he's Russian and he has no emotions. Anyway, Bruce, I'm gonna pose. So we got 3. You're up, even if you say Hank, but
I honestly think Hank's the number 3 goalie at this point because we saw before the shutdown when Shesterkin had that car accident that Hank didn't come out and start the next game. It was Georgiev, and I think even up until the shutdown, granted there wasn't many games, I don't think, between that car accident and the shutdown, but I don't think Hank played. And I think at this point,
he was on the bench, but he was never played.
Georgiev played those games, you know, when Shesterkin had the car accident. It's done. Like, it's not, you know, and I think maybe if they found a way to finish the regular season and play the 10 games, maybe there's not, because the Rangers were outside the top 8. You had to play your best goalie. So I just think it's over, you know, sadly, like we all kind of said. But I'm going even further by saying I think he's the number 3 goalie at this point, at least for
just let me piggyback that.
Just following David Quinn's things.
Let me piggyback that, and I'll say this because I don't have an opinion about this. This is just hypothetical. Based off that, and this might be like a very far-fetched thing, would you back up Hank or would you back up Georgiev?
I mean,
I'll go with you because that was your train of thought.
I mean, if it's me, Hank's the backup just on the veteran experience. But I think if following what David Quinn seemed to have done, especially in the new year, since like January, Hank's been number 3. I don't see him changing it, except for maybe wanting more of a veteran presence on the bench. But I don't think it does much. If you have no intention to play him, and you think Georgiev's the better guy, I think Georgiev is the backup. Sadly, you don't want to see it, but that's been the trend.
I think Hank's the backup. One, yes, veteran presence. 2, even though I just said in the previous episode that Kreider became the de facto captain, Hank still has that role with a lot of the guys on his team.
It's still his team until he leaves, I think is
exactly. And the one other thing that I really want to point in, I don't know if Hank's the backup the whole playoffs. Do you have to name a goalie, or is it just each series that you name it?
You can bring up to 4 goalies with you there. You can only dress 2, obviously, but it's an expanded roster, but you can only dress X amount of people. I think you can have an extra forward or defenseman. I'm not sure.
Well, okay. So the one thing I want to say specifically for this series, Hank was extremely good against Carolina this year. He played him 3 games, won all 3. Had 45 out of 47 shots saved in the first one, 41 out of 43 in the second one, and then 39 out of 42 in the third one. So there's a back-to-back game in the series. I think Hank starts, whether it's game 2 or 3, I guess it depends on what happens in game 1. But I think that he's the backup specifically for that reason. He was that good against Carolina, and also just let him have his one game.
All right. So then Nick, I'll pass that on to you there. Do you think A, Hank is the backup? I think you're going to agree with that. And then B, does the statistics against Carolina change the way you think at all? Or is it still just Igor to you?
You have to you have to play your best goalie, and we're going into the playoffs. It kind of like if you have a hot goalie, anything can happen. So who knows how Igor is going to come back? So
And Hank is a hot goalie, as we all know.
oh yeah, hot. But
Sorry.
you know, you're talking about a veteran presence on the bench, and then you're talking about a young rookie goaltender that just came in and played 12 games and had to nurse an injury and get back on his feet and going. You know, what's their relationship like right now? Are they talking? Are they, you know, is Hank helping coach him and Benoit Allaire is kind of going along with that? Like, who knows really what's going on behind closed doors there, but I think you have to put Hank on that bench just solely for that reason. And I also think, you know, let's face it, if something happens to Igor and Hank has to come in, Henrik Lundqvist is coming into the game. He's still an ounce of Henrik Lundqvist is still there, you know, so you're not going, oh, you know, we got to put Hank in. He was great against Carolina this year. You know, you got to take that with a grain of salt because regular season hockey is going to be completely different from playoff hockey. But Henrik Lundqvist is still Henrik Lundqvist, just with age now, and he's rested. So who knows what's going to happen with that.
Okay. All right. So I think we've pretty much, you know, beat that dead horse. I think we're all pretty much in agreement with Igor. I think the only maybe odd opinion is Bruce over here thinking that maybe he's not the backup, but that's neither here nor there to me. All right. So let me pose this question here. Let's go forward. Who do you think on the Rangers team going forward has to be big going forward? I think it's obvious. I would say don't say Panarin, don't say Zibanejad because I think that's obvious. And then obviously we just beat the goalie situation to death. Who do you think, if there's somebody that is due to step up or needs to step up, or do you just in general think is going to be good in the playoffs coming forward? Because like I said, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, Panarin's going to need to be good and Zibanejad's going to be good. Yes, of course. Going forward, I guess maybe somebody who's not off the radar, or maybe like a secondary guy that you think has to have a big series for the Rangers to be successful. I'll go with Alex first. Who do you think?
For this specific series, I think I'm going to go with Jacob Trouba for this one. You know, Carolina has one of the league's best power plays too, and we need someone that can step up and be able to be a defensive presence like he's supposed to be. I don't think we can win with this shitty defense. I'm sorry for cursing if that's not what's supposed to go on this podcast, but we can't win with this dog crap defense that we had during the
Yep, nailed it. No, that was a joke before. You could curse all you want. It doesn't matter to me. But I agree.
But first run for me on this, I just got to make sure that I'm following.
First time we've ever had guests on the Going 5 Hole podcast. Actually, that's and 2-1. Wow. But, all right, so then you said with Trouba, is that just specifically like you said it's a powerful thing, but is it also because of the depth? Because now that they added Vinny Trocheck at the deadline, I think I saw that Aho Svechnikov line, or that Aho Teravainen line, if I meant to say. They have now another decent line with Trocheck, and I think Svechnikov plays on that line. But do you think that's because of it, because the matchups might not be great because of the depth of Carolina, or do you think it's just because just defense is that important?
It's a little combination of both, but I think I go as the defense is just that poor more than the other. Both aspects, you know, they both mean something, but we can't get by with just offense and a goalie saving our ass every game. Not in the playoffs.
Not in the playoffs. I think it's nice to have the kind of backstop like with Hank and Igor. I think that's nice. I don't think Carolina really has that, because I don't think you're really betting on Mrazek and Reimer. I think it's probably going to be Mrazek to bail you out. But
like I was saying before, Carolina just balanced team, and their penalty kill is really great too. So they just don't get into these situations when
probably the best defense in the league. Not like
they don't get into
3.
these situations where they need to rely on just one specific player to do something. It's just they're a tough team to break down as a whole.
All right. So what about you, Nick? What do you think? Anybody that you think needs to step up without stating the obvious with Panarin and Zibanejad?
So I mentioned it before, and I'm going to agree with Alex, and then I got one more, so I'll be real quick. Truba has to be big. His physicality just has to play a big role, especially against, like you're saying, that now they have a second line, especially against that kind of team. You're going to need physicality to break them down. And let's face it, we don't have 7 games to do it. So it's going to have to happen right off the bat. I think he likes to play the body, and I think he's going to have to for us to be successful. And his offensive power, I honestly really don't think that we're going to need it against Carolina. Jacob Trouba contributing offensively, but his physical presence needs to be heard. Mine is going to be Kreider. Kreider has to have a big series. He has to be a difference maker, a net front presence. He's just got to be a big pest out there and be a hard player to play against. And that's going to win you playoff series, is not those Zibanejads and Panarins, because you know what you're getting with those two. They're going to put up points and they're going to score goals. But how do you wear a team down? You need that physical guy. You need Trouba to play physical, and you need Kreider to play physical in order to win the series. And I think Kreider's going to come back fresh and be ready to go.
All right, yeah. So in that vein, I actually pulled up the line combos because it's been a while. So the first line is clearly going to be, I'm assuming, is going to be a Lindgren Fox matchup. It's Svechnikov, Aho, and Teravainen, and that's just a deadly line across the board. And then you have, with Trocheck there, adding a completely different element. They have Trocheck center, Niederreiter, and Nikic. I don't know how to pronounce it perfectly, but that's a deadly line too. And their third line, which is Jordan Staal, England, Justin Williams, that's a good line too. So, yeah, I totally agree with both of you that second line defense is going to have to be huge, especially Trouba, because I think, you know what, this is where he's going to have to earn that money in that deal. I think it's 1,000% accurate. I'm glad you brought that up, because personally I didn't even really think of that. So let me go with Bruce now. What do you think? Give me somebody else, and if it's one of those, if you think so too, just maybe pick something. No.
I'm gonna say Capo Caco. I would like for him to kind of, if he takes a step up and he can provide consistent and really good secondary source from scoring, like we know we're going to get from the top 6. But if Capo Caco especially if he's going to play on the third line the entire time, and he can provide that scoring, because all I'm hearing is that he looks stronger, he looks better, and since the restart, since camps restarted, I've kind of heard that he looks a little better. So if that translates on the ice and we get someone to provide secondary scoring to make, now if you can take, if your top 9 forwards are dangerous on this team, I think that makes all the difference too. I mean, I know Carolina missing defense, but if you want, I know you can't look further into the playoffs, but if you can establish that and have like your third line be a legit scoring line, like you said, like now Carolina's got 3 legit lines with the acquisitions they made. If Capo Caco steps up, that's a better version of him is almost like getting a guy at the trade deadline, because now if you can plug him in and rely on him, I think that goes a long way.
I agree with that. I think that third line in general has to be a lot better. I'll say for me, there's a lot of guys I could pick here. Lemieux being suspended for 2 games, I think, is monstrous. I don't really want to get into that just because I think it's too much to begin with. If maybe a game was fine, but obviously I'm not on the board of NHL player safety, who just seems to get it wrong every time. But I think it's shown in the past that playoff series are won by unsung heroes. You can look when the Rangers lost in 2014. I don't know if you guys remember, but Kyle Clifford was like unstoppable. Him and Jared Stoll were like, they could not be beaten in the faceoff circle, and they were scoring goals. And then you had guys like in the past, like Ruslan Fedotenko coming like kind of out of nowhere, or Stefan Matteau. And this is going to be, I think Buchnevich is a guy that I think has to be big for them, just because Carolina is going to take away so much of Panarin and Zibanejad space. And I think as Buchnevich, as sometimes people can get on him, I think he's a good secondary depth guy. And I think guys like him have to come out of the woodwork to be good, especially if Zibanejad and Panarin are going to have to probably get their space taken away. I think in that same vein, I think guys like Howden and Gauthier are going to be big too, guys that crash the net hard. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw one of those guys just if the Rangers get a little bit of momentum, I think that they could take off and be good. But I would say Buchnevich is my pick of somebody I think that needs to just take his game to the next level. And I think he's capable of it, even though he looks like he's constantly in pain every time he looks at the camera. But I would say that that's him. So real quick, I'm just going to go to Carolina. Is there anybody on that roster? I mean, I'm sure there is. But out of all that whole roster, just real quick, then we'll get into predictions, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Who on that team are you most worried about? It could be a forward. I don't think it's going to be the goaltenders. I think that's the one strength that the Rangers have. I think it's fair to say the Rangers have the better offense. The Carolina has the better defense, but then the Rangers have better goaltending. But obviously, Carolina is way deeper. I'll start with you, Nick. Anybody on that team that you just are like, we've got to stop him?
Dude, it would have been Dougie Hamilton. Like, I'm looking at his
agree.
stats right now, and he's 47 games played. The guy's got 40 points, and he's kind of just a beast. You know?
Yeah. He was having a Norris caliber type year before he got hurt, man. I really thought he was.
Especially Pop is a threat, but I think we'll be able to shut him down. Teravainen and Aho. I mean, there's three, and that's really who we're going to pick. But I think kind of an unsung player that stood out in the playoffs last year, Jacob Slavin, is somebody that I would worry about in the playoffs because last year –
most underrated player in the league.
And he proved that he could play in the playoffs and shut down somebody in the playoffs. So that's somebody that you really, really have to worry about going forward is, you know, who's he matched up against? And is he able to shut down Panarin or Zibanejad? And can he take that next level to his game again for another year in a row?
All right, I agree.
That's the guy that scares me because that's the difference between them. They have a better defensive unit than us, and this kid's an animal. And if he can shut down one of our top two players, it could cause a problem for us.
I do think Jacob Slavin is probably the most underrated player in the league, so I totally agree with that. Let me go to you, Bruce. Bruce, what about you? Anybody in particular?
I mean, I know Nick mentioned Dougie Hamilton being out. Like that was kind of the one guy that I was kind of like that I'd be worried about, obviously. And you know, you mentioned their forwards and everything, but ultimately, it's the guy that's probably going to fill in for Dougie Hamilton, and it looks like. Just from kind of reading some of the reports, it looks like Sammy Vatanen's going to play alongside of Jacob Slavin and kind of fill that spot.
Another trade deadline acquisition too.
So I feel like, and I mean, it's obviously a downgrade just based on what Hamilton was doing, but that's still the top line defense, and if they're going to roll with that, I think it's good enough. Like you already said about Slavin, but. So I'm the next to him isn't bad. I think if you can prove you can beat those two guys, then I think that's kind of a big thing for me.
It's better than what the Rangers would have to do and going to like a guy like if somebody got hurt going to like Libor Hayek. I think the drop off is not as much.
Yeah.
But all right, Al, what about you? Anybody in particular?
I mean, it's not going to be very interesting because I was going to say Jacob Slavin.
That's fine. I'm totally okay with that.
I don't think sure, losing Dougie Hamilton's a big deal, but we already saw this season that Jacob Slavin stepped up with the amount of minutes he was getting as soon as Hamilton went out. Mm-hmm. That's a reason why I've been saying it for this whole episode now that they have a good penalty kill. They're a balanced team. They're tough to break down. He's a big reason for that, the fact that he was able to play that shutdown defensive role. I mean, if I had to pick a second guy, then I guess I would just go chalk and say Sebastian Aho. But I mean, a couple of Ahos, got to throw that in there. So.
Couple of Ahos out there.
But no, it's definitely Slavin for me. I'm like Nick was saying, we saw it in the playoffs before, and I think we saw it again in the regular season here. So that's going to be tough for a young team like ours to try to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, the Slavin thing is fair, and I mean, he wasn't my first, but he's obviously up there. I just think. How he matches up with a Panarin or Zibanejad, depending on what they want to do. I'm assuming it's probably going to be Panarin, but I gotta go with it's that top line, and I'm mostly specifically Aho because him and Teravainen were unbelievably good this year. And I didn't watch a ton of the Hurricanes just because it's not like a team you like really like look like
sure
to match and watch because of the way they play. Aho, most of his goals are scored in front of the net and picking up garbage. And you wouldn't think that, but if you go and watch like his highlight tape for the amount of goals he had this year, which I believe was 38, and I know it's 38 because I'm just looking at it. A lot of the goals, I mean, he has the ability to score from distance, but I mean, he hovers around the net because that Carolina team runs that offense through their defense, and they put pretty much everything on net. And that's, I think, the thing that scares me the most about this team just in general is how deep the defense is. There's no real good matchup. There's no guy like Mark Stahl on the team where you go, okay, that's who we're going to try to get our guy out against. I mean, you look at their lineup. I mean, it's Edmondson, Fleury, Gardner, Shea, say what you want about him, Van Riemsdyk, Vaughn, and Slavin. They're deep. They're just deep across the board. So I'll say Aho, but realistically, I think Slavin is probably what I want to say. But all right, real quick, we'll wrap this up. I'm going to get everybody's prediction. How many games? Who do you think is going to win? Who do you think is going to have a big series? And do you think I don't know what to say, but like, I guess, do you think it'll be a tough game series, or will it just be like a kind of like easier, so to speak? I mean, do you think it'll be like it'll go 5 games? So I'll start with you, Bruce. Just what do you think, and what's your prediction in general?
I think because it's so even and it's such a short series, I think there's just the added pressure to step up each game. But also at the same time, these guys haven't played in months. If these games are sloppy and if these games are just kind of rough around the edges because they're getting back into the swing of things, I'm going to take the best players overall between the teams, and that's Panarin and Zibanejad. I think they're way better than, and they're the best 2 players that are going to step on the ice in those 2 teams, and I don't think it's close as good as that top Carolina line is. But I think the Rangers take it in 4. I think the super, and I always say this about basketball all the time. The best player wins a series, and I know that doesn't happen in hockey, but I don't see a goalie taking over.
But you're still doubling down on it.
Right. I don't think it happens in hockey, but I think for this specific scenario of just guys really taking the ice for honestly the first time, one exhibition game, and then you're right into a playoff series. That's tough. Yeah. I don't care who you are, but that's where I say I think the best players overall will take the series over. So Rangers in 4.
Fine. All right, Al, you.
I'm gonna go with Rangers in 5. Based on what we saw in the regular season, I know playoff hockey is different, but I don't think they're going to be as tuned in as what we normally see in the playoffs. So based on what we saw in the regular season, how these 2 teams played against each other, the Rangers were good against Carolina, and I think I almost want to say 4, but I'm going to play it safe and say Rangers in 5.
Fair.
Guy that I think is going to have a big series, I would say D'Angelo. I think he'll continue how he was doing this season, just be a big part on offense, a big part on the power play, and be able to really, really tear this Hurricanes team apart. I'm trying to figure out what I want to say there.
Really tear apart. But all right, Nick, you.
All right, so I already told everyone I got Rangers in 4. I think we beat them in 2 out of 3 categories: offense, goaltending. They take us in defense, but now missing Dougie Hamilton. I keep harping on it. It's just such a big loss for that team. I'm not expecting them to have an answer for Chris Kreider. I'm really not. And whether he's contributing by scoring or just a net front presence and a physical presence, I don't think Carolina is going to have an answer for Chris Kreider. And I think even if you don't see the points from Chris Kreider, the eye test will show you that this guy's going to be a difference maker in this series. I think he's ready to go.
I think, being a known pessimist when it comes to things like this is very hard to tell. Does anybody by chance, I mean, if you don't have it in front of you, don't worry about it, but what the odds are in the series is, like, who the favorite is?
Yeah, Carolina's minus 140 or minus 120, and the Rangers are plus 140.
Okay, so it's not even like –
it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
Okay. So that being said, I will say whomever wins – it's going to be in 5 games. I really don't see a way that this goes 3 or even 4, personally. I think that this series almost benefits the Rangers in it being a 5-game series as opposed to 7, because I think if they had if they had to get 4, I don't know if they could do it. I'm going to go Rangers in 5, but it's going to be awfully close. It's going to be awfully close. I think Ryan Lindgren is going to have to be huge and is going to be huge. I think he's got to be physical, like you guys said, like the way Trouba has to be. I do think that's how Lindgren is going to have to be. And then I just think that in Fox too, that top line is just going to have to be money. With that, I think that Zibanejad, Buchnevich, Kreider line is going to have to be great, especially if Panarin's getting those tough matchups with guys like Slavin or vice versa. I think it's got to be that case too. And I think it's going to come down to, I think, since this is such a kind of cold start, I think that having the better goalie is huge in this series. And who knows, maybe Mrazek or Reimer, I'm assuming it's Mrazek, is going to catch fire too. I mean, God, I hope not. But I'm going to go Rangers in 5, and it's going to be a real tough, grinded-out series. So, yeah, I mean, I'll end it there. And I'm just really happy that hockey's back. I'm really glad that we all kind of got together to do this. Yeah. This was great.
For sure.
Hopefully this gets out before. I mean,
yeah,
this will probably come out next January, but
yeah, I'll try and put it up as soon as possible.
I'm just really happy because I know I need it. I'm sure you guys need it too. It's just a nice type of something to watch and just be happy about. And I know that this city needs it too for the way things have been going. So I really hope that it comes out and the Rangers do well. And I mean, and even if they don't win, it'll just be great for these couple of days just to watch hockey.
Hey, and if they lose, there's that chance of the first pick that's 0 because Montreal's getting it.
Lafreniere. Yeah, we all know that too. So, all right. So that's all for me. If anybody else has anything, feel free. We actually have another podcast to do. So
we do.
We do have
I have one closing word.
Close your statement.
I actually messed up. I probably should have picked the Hurricanes to win since they have a couple players with better Corsi than the Rangers do.
Yeah. We're not even going to play it. We're just going to look. How's their Fenwick? It doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Bubble. Why do we even do this?
Yeah.
Just spreadsheet.
Too. I'm saying that. I'll go to you guys. Everybody gets one closing statement. I gave mine. Al sort of gave his. If he wants another one, he can have it. Nick, give me a little closing thought. Just go.
Right. I'm hopping off right after this for comical relief. Fuck Corsi. Let's go Rangers. Bye.
See ya. All right, Bruce. What about you?
I don't know, man. I got nothing. I just hope everyone hits subscribe and like. And I want to thank Nick for coming on, even though he's gone now.
Nick was here.
Oh, who?
Who?
Oh no. Stan.
Nick was here.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Please subscribe and just look out for our future episodes.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, of course. Anytime, man.
Anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome to, bro.
All right.
Really appreciate
Only if you wear the hat.
Oh, I intentionally made sure I wore this hat, not an opposing team hat. So.
Just have a Stars hat on.
I could have worn the Stars jersey. I did get the Stars in the playoff pool. So
I know. I knew you'd be happy about that.
All right.
I knew you'd be happy.
All right.
Are we off the air? Are we?
Nope.
Now we are.